Welcome to the Truth and Dare podcast with Dr. Nandi Shareef, where we shine a light on how embracing everyday vulnerabilities helps us live fuller and more authentic lives. Tune into our podcast to hear how women practice accepting and loving the most vulnerable parts of themselves. And then stay for the pep talks about creating the space to do it yourself. Are you ready to jump into this episode, sis? Yes? All right? Then let's get it. Welcome to the Truth Then Dare podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nandi Shareef, and today we're talking about an important truth. Change creates energy. I'm joined today by an incredible guest co-host. She's a dynamic coach and a master at accelerating opportunity for her clients by increasing their exposure. She does this by elevating leaders and organizations to increase impact by being more visible as CEO of her company, Shine Army. She's the best-selling author of the book Boss Bride and a former senior editor of Essence magazine. Most importantly, she's a Georgia girl who slept in her glasses as a kid because she wanted to see her dreams. Sisters, please warmly welcome Charreah K. Jackson. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. Thank you for the opportunity and that bomb intro. Excited to be here.
So, Charreah, walk us through your decision to leave New York, full-time journalism, your relationship, essentially the whole life you built. Why did you choose change? What was stale, stagnant, stuck, and in need of a shift?
Yes, well, twofold. First, change. I chose change, and also change chose me. And you talk about that season of my life. I did a radical reset of my life. And I have to say, I did a radical reset of my life where in a time externally, it looked like I was on top of the world. So had my dream job for a decade, went to Howard University, the real HU. We're not going to start it. I'm not
Hey now. Real HU is Hampton, okay?
I am on the podcast of a proud Hamptonian. I respect the space of the Institute. Much regard. So seriously, okay. So I always, to your point, I think change becomes even more important of a conversation when you are a big dreamer, when you're someone who goes for what you want. And so I was hyper focused in wanting to move to New York, wanting to work in journalism, started in my field of choice, graduated from Howard on a Saturday, started my role, started at Essence 4 days later. I'm sitting at a cubicle, moved to New York. So my career took off fast, and I was ambitious in college. And I say that to say, it's never too late to change, no matter how far you go down the road. And for some of us, we think because it was a dream at one season that it has to always stay the dream. And so sometimes for hyper successful people, we are afraid to change because the thing we're doing, we feel like, well, this is what I wanted. And the question has become, well, is it still what I want now? And so fast forward to the middle of my 30s, my first book is published globally. I produced my own book tour around the country and world, and I am burnt out. And so I found myself in this season of I knew I wanted more, and it was time for me to take some bold action, make some big decisions so that the rest of my life could be just as exciting and fulfilling. And so to your point, I knew very clearly I was ready to change careers and transition out of a full-time role in journalism where I was a senior editor at what was the largest magazine publisher in the world. And so it was giving myself permission to be okay with a reset. Even for other people, it looked like I had climbed the highest I could go. I knew, but wait, there's more. Mm-hmm. And I knew there was more that I had to give, and I knew I needed more of my own time to be able to build that thing that I couldn't fully articulate. And so I knew I started to prepare for transitioning out of working full-time into an experience of my own. And the other caveat is when you've done something for a long time, people get used to you doing that thing. So I knew very clearly the end goal of what I wanted to build, and I needed to figure out that in between. So the great thing I did in changing seasons is I made big changes in community. And so what you want to do for those that you talk about those changes, let me quickly say what they were. So left my job in publishing a few months later. And it's 5 years now, so it's so full circle. So my book came out in the summer in 2018. I left my job 6 months later, moved to from New York back to my hometown of Atlanta 6 months later. In that year, I also became a licensed minister. Spoiler alert, did not see that coming. And really started my business and started my next business. I had a business that now, if I'm honest, I realized I didn't have a business. I thought I had a business. Now I actually have a business. Now that I actually have
Talk
a
about it.
I realized I didn't have a business before.
Come on. Come on.
And so it's been exciting starting over my love life. So I moved back to Atlanta single and started dating, got in a relationship, went through a breakup. So I've just become a totally different version of myself. And I'm so proud of the girl who was willing to step into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Externally, didn't know externally, but knew enough about me that I would be okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so powerful. And I think about what you said, that you knew you were ready for a shift, and that what looked fantastic and amazing and fabulous and it for everybody else wasn't that for you. And you had to go into your own self, right? And sit with your own worthiness and your own confidence and your own assuredness and say, but this is what I want, and I'm willing to dream a new dream. And when I think about the sisters who are listening to this, who may be feeling stuck or stagnant, it could be that the dream that they once had is now expired. And that there may be a little bit of an unwillingness to let go of that dream because they're afraid of what could be on the other side. And I know you had a vision, but I am curious if there was anything else that you thought might be on the other side of you or for you, something else maybe that didn't feel as exciting, vulnerability, uncertainty. And how did you still choose in the midst of feeling that as well?
It's so powerful because in transparency, the only choice was me.
Say it again, please.
The only choice to make was, you talked about how did it feel. The only choice there was to make was a choice that would make me feel that I was living the life I wanted to live. Now we talk about highs, and I would be remiss, I tell you, okay, 4 days after I graduated from Howard, I'm in New York working at Essence. But what you should know is the summer before that, I was an intern at Essence, and the summer before that, I was home after just going through 5 months of chemotherapy and then 3 months of radiation.
Mm,
Diagnosed with cancer at 19, my sophomore year in college. And so I had already been through a very, and I don't wish that on experience on anyone. However, it was very sobering for me at a very young age. And I was very clear, this is my one life to live.
oh, it's good.
Some of us are sacrificing the life we're called to because we're afraid of feeling like a failure. And if I'm honest, I already felt like I was failing myself because I was not completely fulfilled in the life I was living.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a higher level of stability that a job wasn't going to give me, that a man wasn't going to give me, that only I could give myself.
Ooh.
And so it looks externally like, oh my gosh, you went and walked to the edge and jumped off and left all this glam. No, no, no. I went to go listen to my soul, and my soul said, I want more.
Yes.
And so that became some radical conversations I had to have with myself that led to radical conversations with everyone else in my life that led to a radically way more fulfilling and exciting life that I get to live now. And still using all the tools that I had from my previous chapter. And I had to re-engage because a lot of us are living out the dreams of an older version of ourselves. So yes, I was living the dream life of my 19-year-old self. At 33, my dreams weren't, I didn't desire to be at all these events and go out. I desired to be at the farmer's market and to cook and to actually own the place where I was living. Like there was a higher level of life. And as we know at Dr. Nandi, we know that in order to have what I don't have, I will have to be willing to give up what I currently have. So I was willing to
Ooh.
give up the life I had lived to have access to a life I could only dream about.
Hmm. So, Charreah, how did the energy in your life change when you chose you? What happened then?
Mm. I would say this, choosing me. I mean, obviously, in the short term, for any of us, there's turbulence when you when you take a plane and you go higher heights, there is turbulence, right? And so it asked me, if I choose me, then I have to actually know who is me. There actually has to be a level of self-awareness and understanding of self to even know who is me and what does she need. So there requires a totally radically different relationship with myself. And so I just was at one of my, a mentor and god sister of mine recently hosted a brunch on Sunday. It was a mother-daughter brunch. She had some young girls there. And for all of my 30s, I have been really consistent in journaling and hearing my thoughts, catching what comes to me in a way that I didn't have that access or relationship with myself in my 20s. So when you talk about, I can run my life, I could tell you about so much of me because I've studied myself. I know my habits, I know my quirks. I can describe myself in detail. I can tell you, I can anticipate myself and anticipate me because I'm a student of myself. And so that requires a level of focus, intention, and to your point, a level of vulnerability and honesty that I had to be willing to interrogate who am I anyway? Because to make that big leap of leaving, living in Harlem in New York for 12 years, moving back to my hometown of Atlanta, the first year I was here, I lived back home with my mom. One of the best gifts that I needed because I had left so much of my power sitting in my past.
Ooh,
you want to go higher, but you don't have the fuel for it because you're already leaking so much of your power in your past. My anniversary of my last day at work and the power of declaration. So you talked about that change. So in December of 2018, I was in the power of community. I'm at lunch with a girlfriend of mine. At this point, I had been talking about I'm ready to leave my editorial job. I'm ready to leave Essence. I'm ready to leave. Like my inner circle had heard that song and danced for years at that, but probably the last 2 years. And she said, "Girl, you've been saying it. So by when?" And I out of my mouth, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I said, "By my birthday." My birthday is February 8th. My last day was February 6th. And so just the power of speaking life over yourself. And so I say that to say now I'm 5 years from that moment. And what used to be my salary this year on February 6th, I had already closed it.
yeah, you have.
I said, it took me a year to make what I can say that in February, we talking less than 6 weeks into the year, you've already signed that. You good? If you good? But that couldn't happen until I had a different relationship with myself and a higher amount of my own power. It will require me to do, for those of us who want to play bigger and bolder, it requires us to have radical conversations to say, well, is there any point or anything I've been through so far that still is holding some of my power? So I had to go get some of my old power, have some fresh interpretations of past experience that gave me freedom so that there was no one, anybody in my life at any point could walk through my door right now and there's nothing I haven't said. Ooh. So I got emptied. I emptied out all the old hurt, all the old pain, upset. There's nothing that I haven't said that I needed to say so that I am fully fueled up and feel fully free to fully face forward and move into what you talked about, that next thing. And that it asked everything of me. I was willing to give up everything that I already have to have the things that I wanted that I did not have, which it required a level of honesty. What do you truly desire that you don't have yet? And are you willing to acknowledge that the version of you are right now does not have what it takes to have that? Because if you did, you'd already have it.
Girl.
So I had to break up with who I'd been because I knew she had gotten me far. She had gotten me to Oprah's backyard. She had gotten me to Susan Taylor's penthouse. She had got me standing in the red room with the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. And yet there was way more that I wanted for me that I had not scratched the surface of. And so I knew, oh, wow, it is time for a radical reset. And which meant a lot of change, which meant moving every year for 4 years. And one of the best gifts I ever did, because you realize what you need when you're willing to let go and move.
Ooh, you realize what you need when you are willing to get up and move. Charreah, you just talked about how valuable it was, how powerful it was to take a real, vulnerable, honest look at yourself, to see who you were and how that changed. And so in moving, not only did you evaluate, I hear you saying physical things like, I don't need these things. Every 4 years I'm moving. I don't actually need them. But also you've spent the last few minutes talking about there were things inside of me. There were people and places and experiences in my past that had no business being in my present and then in my future. And so not only did I drop all of the luggage and all of the boxes and all of the things that I didn't need off at Goodwill, but you left all of the rest of the stuff behind too. It's powerful and it's potent, and yet there's so much in it. There's so much changing. There's such a willingness, there's an openness in your spirit to have things be different so that you can have different. And I'm wondering, as a successful coach and consultant and entrepreneur who literally made her salary on February 8th this year, only 6 weeks into the year, come on, boss move. I was not going to let that pass.
Thank you, friend.
How do you encourage yourself to keep changing? How do you support yourself through the inherent vulnerability of changing at each new level?
You really, I love this question and I love this conversation because I haven't had a lot of places to really talk about it, because now in this chapter, people are just meeting this version and she's moving. And so I love this engagement and the opportunity to really process it. And what I'll say is, what's powerful to me that came inside of your question was, I'm so much more present, that I'm in this day, in this moment. As we sit in this moment, I'm in it fully with you. And so I would say there's a level of care that I'm willing to have of myself that I need less externally because of my emotional, spiritual, and mental hygiene is a level of care. If you're talking about change, you're talking about, it requires, as you know, you're coming off of all of your automatics. And so it requires a level of mental presence from you, because it's like, if you drive the same route every day, you can listen to the music. You can do a lot of other things while driving because you already know. But the first time you're going somewhere and you're going up a mountain, y'all, we be trying to turn down the road. Like, we need a level of focus. And so when you're in this conversation, when we're talking about being radically different to have something be different, it requires that same level of focus, which means that it requires a mental strength from you. And so one of the things I'm so much more intentional around is I locate myself and if not daily, at least a couple of times a week. I know the things that keep me fueled up, that keep me feeling like my most powerful self, and I am a friend to me. So whether even I was coaching a few clients this week, we had a training with our cohort of leaders we're supporting on their visibility and marketing. And I shared with them my real sales scripts before I get on a sales call. And I showed them the prayer I pray. I showed them the results I include in the script, because in the script, I show them, I ask myself, which version of you is showing up?
Yes.
Because when you choose to live a full life and you are living a life different than who you've historically been, that version of you still exists. And so in all this change, I have one tattoo. It is one of my favorite creatures. It is a butterfly. And one of the things I was curious about in my love of butterflies was, do butterflies remember being caterpillars? Like, once you have wings, do you remember what it feels like to crawl? And so, of course, I looked it up, and of course, there was a study done. And what they did was they exposed caterpillars to a substance that tastes horrible. So they smell ooh. And so what they saw was, the first time the caterpillars licked it, didn't like it. When they exposed the caterpillars to that same substance again, they knew not to lick it. They knew, ooh, this isn't great. This isn't good for me. They let the caterpillars go into the chrysalis, let them literally dissolve into a pulp, come back out, look completely different, does not look like what it's been through, has wings, expose it. And what they saw was the butterfly still remembered what the caterpillar learned. So I say that to say, when we talk about going through change, we also have to remember, even when we have wings, we still remember what it felt like to crawl.
Yes.
And so I have to remind myself now that I'm in seasons where I'm stronger and bolder and can fly higher than when I was crawling, I still want the highest version of me to be making decisions, not the person who still remembers crawling.
That's so good. I hear you saying that the vulnerability exists in the possibility that if you aren't present, that if you aren't intentional, that if you aren't practiced in locating yourself, connecting to yourself, seeing and feeling the value of the different choices, that you could easily go back to where you came from. And when you choose yourself, when you choose different, when you choose more, it requires a different level of hygiene and rigor and process and ritual that only happens at the level of the butterfly. It wasn't happening at the place where the caterpillar once was. It's Charreah, I just want to sit and talk to you for the rest of the day over some tea, transition into a little champagne, because there's so much here. But I want to leave our sisters who have learned so much from you today with an understanding of why you feel it's important for them to dare to change.
Yes. Mm. You deserve. You didn't work this hard. We didn't work this hard. We did not persevere through all the things we've been through, not to put on our wings and fly, not to get the full expression of ourselves. And so, for those of us engaged in this conversation, those of us who choose change are choosing a higher, deeper, fuller expression of who we always been. And if you aren't willing to change, you then let your struggles win the story. Because then you stay stuck in the things that were meant to strengthen you, and you let them become the star versus you coming through the other side and being the hero, being the one who gets to enjoy that fuller experience of life where literally you can fly, where literally you can see above, you can look down on ground you used to crawl on. And so I want us not to let the process, and that's what keeps us stuck, right? And so even in this conversation, was it hard? Do I miss my corporate Amex card? Do I miss my corporate travel? Not anymore. But did I? Yes. And I'm not gonna lie. Do I miss it? Yes. Do I wish somebody else was paying some of these bills? Yes. But the freedom, because the version of you who's willing to walk through the fire, who's willing to go in the chrysalis, the version of you who's willing to give up what you have, just by being willing to change, you prove to yourself who you are and what you're truly capable of. And so I want for our community to hear, and that's why I love this truth, this play on truth and daring, this powerful, radical conversation on changes, because we need more people unafraid of change and willing to count the cost of not changing. Because let me tell you this, sisters, I get chills. I still get chills around what if I weren't willing to acknowledge the ways the season I was in was expired. I was living in New York. I left right at the 2019, right before the city I lived in was an epicenter of a global pandemic. Right? It's never lost on me that sometimes we are arrogant on the borderline of ignorant to think that if we don't change, things are just going to stay. So when you are feeling the call in your spirit to change, that it is time for something new, heed the call, sis, because you're assuming that if you don't change, things will stay the same. You don't know that the change is really a provision and a protection for you so that you're set up for where the world is changing anyway. Nothing is staying the same. So to your point, to not be willing to change, either I have to choose to be stagnant or I have to choose to change. It's only two choices.
Sis, I hope you heard Charreah in her fullness. We are asking you to dare to change, to be willing to give up what you had to have what you don't. Your life, your vision, your excellence, your genius, the most brilliant version of yourself. She's waiting for you, sis. And all you got to do is say yes. Say yes to her hopes, say yes to her dreams, say yes to the uncertainty and the vulnerability, not just because it feels good, because it may not in that season, but you know what's coming on the other side. And if you need help and support with what that looks like, you got the right person on the call here. We got Charreah K. Jackson, an incredible coach, consultant, a leader, a visionary. And you can spend some time with her too. She has the Scene Leader platform, which has all around visibility for executives and entrepreneurs. You can go to sceneleader.com, get their free download, 7 shortcuts, and you can find at Scene Leader on IG and on Facebook. But then also, y'all, she got more than one company. She's multi-hyphenate. So you can see her with her Shine Army organization as well. She's CEO of Shine Army. They support companies and organizations through marketing, social media, PR consulting, training, audience growth, event strategy. And if you're a leader or a speaker, she can do development for you, PR, as well as she has a Be Visible with the Scene and Paid Accelerator. You can email her at Charreah@shinearmy.com or book a call at shinearmy.com. Charreah, you are a powerhouse. I cannot believe I get to call you my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the Truth and Dare podcast and for daring our sisters to change, because it's worth it. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I invite you to join us and listen to the other podcasts that are a part of this season. We're really excited as the Truth and Dare movement to welcome you and being a part of this family, a part of this sisterhood. And if you're yearning for more real and authentic conversations, subscribe to the podcast. If you want to learn more about the Truth and Dare movement, go to truththandare.com, sign up for my email list, and check out my services and offerings, including live events. We encourage you to listen. We encourage you to comment. And we encourage you to share your stories with us too at hello@truththandare.com. And most importantly, we dare you to dream. Until next time, take care.